Think Forward. Think Research Channel.
You see in Hollywood films glamour, sex, drugs, and that's the image of America most Egyptians see.
They go and watch these movies and come out thinking America is skin-clad women with no morals and men fighting each other.
Americans never see Egyptian films.
We get all our impressions of the Middle East from the news.
You know, everything that I see on television or on the news in the Middle East is, about violence. It's a different world.
Rolling.
Twelve of us came together to watch Egyptian films and American films.
And to talk about our perceptions of each other's cultures.
We have a variety of backgrounds and beliefs.
We're Muslim.
We're Christian.
And Jewish.
We're American.
And we're Middle Eastern.
And we're all undergraduate students at the University of Southern California.
The reason I wanted to do the research project was because, number one, I'm a film major and I like watching movies, and I'd never ever seen any Arabic films. I've been very fascinated by Islam, even though I hadn't had much education on it.
I love to talk to people. I'm an English major, so picking things apart and discussing things is really what I love to do. Like seeing 9/11.
Exactly. I totally agree. It was very...
I'm a very opinionated person, and I like to espouse my views on other people. I thought it'd be very interesting to be able to have an arena where I could discuss my opinions.
I always love to hear what people have to say about things. Getting to know something that was out of my realm at the time was really exciting to me.
I mean, as much as they could imply, she was...
I read about these studies and I think, people don't think that. Who said that? Why would anybody say that? And so I thought it would be a really good opportunity to get what I had to say out.
She's like Mary Magdalene. She's like Mary... This guy.
We're really looking at the bigger picture of how film interpretation shapes the perception of culture, in this case American culture and Arab culture. We're looking at how you interpret these films, but then also in how much those interpretations may change based on our conversations and discussions with one another. We've paired Egyptian and American films in double features with similar storylines and characters. First, we compared the Egyptian film The Closed Doors with the American film Pay It Forward. Both examine the relationship of a teenage boy and his single working mother. Each boy searches for a solution to the problems he encounters in his community. In The Closed Doors, Muhammad struggles to support his mother and stay in school. As he grows more hopeless about his future, he turns to the local mosque for support and is increasingly drawn to Islamic extremism. Muhammad reacts with rage when he discovers his mother is having an affair with his teacher.
I thought it was completely absurd, the whole thing. And I mean, I'm sure it obviously depicted a lot of social problems, but at the same time, just the depiction of it and how far the director went with it, it just blew me away.
I don't think he pulled things out of a hat. It was a boy who was in a poor family, who couldn't make ends meet and was so influenced by radical Islam to the extent that he killed his mother.
Right, but I mean, you don't see kids in Egypt going around and killing their mothers.
People who are seeing this movie in the West, they might, if they don't read between the lines and they just take it literally, then it's just disastrous.
Anybody else want to speak to that? Layla?
I think it did a good job of showing the steps of how he became radicalized. The way he chose to deal with his problem was going to the only authority that he felt could help him. It was not a psychologist, it was a sheikh. And what sheikhs do now with the Islamic religion is they take it and then people twist Islam and say you're going to have 72 virgins, you're going to go to paradise. They get excited and they become radicalized.
I agree with that, but at the same time, I think it's not suitable for a Western audience that doesn't understand Islam that well.
I disagree.
I
totally disagree with you. Just because something is unflattering doesn't mean it's illegitimate.
I'm not saying.
This is an Egyptian director. He wishes to show us this facet of his country, and I think that all it really does is it places a little bit of responsibility on the viewer to look at this, absorb it, and then develop questions and go talk to people who are Muslim and ask them.
Right. What's the typical American going to do? I mean, when they see radical Muslims on TV and on the news burning flags or doing this or that, or they see Osama bin Laden issuing this edict or that edict, are they going to go ask their Muslim neighbor, hey, do you really believe in Osama bin Laden? Are you going to bomb me?
What's the alternative? That we're going to let people watch Egypt be on television screens when it's just protests and burning the American flag and telling Christians that they're infidels and letting that be the view that mass Americans see? Or are we going to provide them with a movie that at least tries to explain why terrorists become terrorists?
But then when you have somebody who's never been exposed to it before and all they see of Muslims is that's their perception of Islam.
There's thousands of hours worth of news around the globe, but they only show you, what, 20 minutes? And what 20 minutes are they going to show you? You have 50, 100, 200, even 1,000 people attacking embassies. But there's 1 billion Muslims in the world. I mean, percentage-wise, it's nothing. But then you see the 1,000 people that are doing something violent, and then all of a sudden, all Muslims are violent.
In the second film, Pay It Forward, Trevor creates an idealistic plan for helping people, a plan his mother doesn't understand.
What? You can't have a friend like that.
My assignment.
What assignment?
You won't get it. Mr. Simonette will get it.
Who's Mr. Simonette? Hey, I'm talking to you.
He's my teacher.
The idea spreads to a hospital where a sick girl unexpectedly receives help from a stranger.
I want you to get us some air. I got your back, sis. Oh, you still here?
I see Pay It Forward as an optimistic kind of film, just because even though he dies, there's all these great people and they come to his vigil. The world isn't going to change. He changed, maybe 100, 200 people, and he got his message across. I think that's the optimism of this movie, that even though you might not achieve the success that you want, you can still achieve some sort of success.
In Pay It Forward, despair was really internalized, and I think one of the comments of Pay It Forward was the fact that it's almost impossible to deal with that on your own, and what makes the difference is somebody else coming up to you and expressing a sense of community to you.
The only African-American character who was even in the Pay It Forward was an absolute stereotype of an African-American gangster.
You just see him kind of like going through all these actions and talking about Bloods and Crips, and it was just a little offensive that he was the only African-American really that we get in the film.
Why do we care, what the breakdowns of the different ethnicities are? I didn't see a single Asian person in the movie. Does that really matter to me? No, it doesn't. What are we going to do? Walk around every time you read a story or see a movie, tally the number of people in each different race? I just don't think it's a central issue in the story. If it's a race movie,
people
okay.
always have underlying biases or prejudices that they might not even know about, and it reflects in the work that they do. Maybe they didn't even do it purposely, but they have an underlying bias and prejudice that they didn't even think about. They just thought, this would be funny if we make the black guy a gangster, and he's kind of funny, and he gets stabbed, and he pulls out a gun.
But if they weren't thinking about it, why do we have to agonize over it,
Because it's perpetuating this stereotype of black people or minorities or whatnot. For example, you see so many racist Americans out there. All they see of black people is that you see on TV, oh, this guy goes to jail, this guy does this, and then they see this movie and continues this perception in their mind that African Americans are gangsters or they're thieves or they're menaces to society.
When films reinforce stereotypes, how might they prejudice what we believe about a culture? For instance, if you were to judge Egypt or America solely by watching these films, where would you say women have it worse?
Both have it terribly, but on different levels or in different ways. For example, I mean, here you have women often objectified as sex objects, but over there in the Middle East, for example, they're often repressed or told to stay home or not do anything.
I just think it's ridiculous to say that you can even compare the equality in the two regions because women are second-class citizens in those countries.
I think you're really overgeneralizing. I mean, I think unless you've actually lived there, you kind of have a skewed perception. I mean,
but maybe unless you're a woman, you have a skewed perception too.
What country in the Middle East doesn't treat women as second-class citizens? Because in Egyptian courts, a woman is half a man.
The woman in the Middle East who is raped in the Middle East, okay, her life is over. She cannot get married. She can't have kids. She's an outcast. She can't get a job. Her life is done. Those are the women who become the suicide bombers. Their life is over. The women here who get raped, they have opportunities. They can go to a shelter. They have like opportunities available to them.
Sharaf?
On what do you base all of this? You just said you grew up here. You didn't grow up in Iran.
What I base my opinions on? My readings. I just spend a lot of my time reading about the Middle East.
I've lived in Kuwait all my life, and Kuwait is even more, the government is more based on Islam than Egypt. And I've never seen anything
But
with
you're
what
not
you're
a woman.
talking about. Yeah, that's the other point. Exactly, yeah. I mean, sure, I do agree.
Yeah, I'm not complaining about this food right now.
Yeah, I wish I knew more about things that have happened in the past politically. I just haven't. I was kind of quiet during the big group discussion because for me, I'm not as knowledgeable as I probably should be. When those conversations are happening, the last thing I want to do is say something that's off base in any way. I don't really watch the news, and it's on purpose because it's all negative, and to me, why do I want to watch that?
I have gotten most of my news from CNN, ABC, Fox News. You know, I can't say that my opinion of the way the Middle East runs itself is very high, but I also can't say that my opinion of how we've handled the situation has been extremely high either.
Many people can say anything about the Middle East, you know, that it's backwards, it doesn't want to progress, but I've lived there and I know that it's not backwards. I know that there's the issue's so much more complex than seeing it at first glance. And that's okay with me. And I realize that I'm more complex because I come from two different countries, and that's become very okay with me.
I'm an American as well, and I'm also Iranian, so what I think I see both sides. Like I said, I'm right in the middle. When I went to Iran, I was completely defending America, and I was torn apart when I would see ridiculous things. And when I'm here, I'm constantly sticking up for Iran, so I'm being torn.
I've lived here my entire life. The fact that I kind of am like fragmented between two cultures makes me not trust when people just completely identify with one culture. In high school, if I was discriminated against, or when I was discriminated against, which it wasn't too often, but it happened after 9/11, you know, that whole situation was kind of weird, and people would just say things. I mean, I'd be walking in the hallways in high school, and people would just say small things to me, and I couldn't react to it because then I would be, you know, I would be judged as identifying with, you know, the terrorists.
I had friends who had parents in the World Trade Center, and I mean, it was an atrocious thing. And then America went and invaded Afghanistan, and I thought it was an atrocious thing too, because I mean, it's not okay to to attack the World Trade Center, but it's okay to have collateral damage in Afghanistan. And I mean, well over 3,000 people in Afghanistan, innocent people, died. People went up in arms about 9/11, but nobody cared about collateral damage in Afghanistan. And I was just shocked by how insensitive people could be simply because those people aren't Americans. It's as if they had less of a right to live.
The second set of films is the classic American Western High Noon, starring Gary Cooper as Marshal Will Kane, and the Egyptian political thriller A Man in Our House, starring Omar Sharif as the resistance fighter Ibrahim. Both characters risk their lives to do what they feel is right.
Please, Will, if you just tell me what this is all about.
I sent a man up 5 years ago for murder. He was supposed to hang. But up north, they commuted it to life. Now he's free. I expect he'll come looking for me. 3 of his old bunch are waiting at the depot. I'll swear in a bunch of special deputies, and with a posse behind me, maybe there won't even be any trouble.
You know there'll be trouble.
Then it's better to have it here.
A Man in Our House takes place in the 1940s under British control of Egypt. A group of political activists meet in secret to discuss Ibrahim's plan to assassinate the prime minister.
In A Man in Our House, it was clearly only Omar Sharif's problem, but the family, who was never committed to politics at all, still got involved and still helped him because they had that sense of community, they had that commitment to each other. Whereas in High Noon, people kind of abandoned him and told him, it's every man for himself kind of thing.
A Man in Our House definitely portrayed loyalty and camaraderie between in Egypt, which I think I've said before is one of the things I love about Egypt, is the sense of family and camaraderie and loyalty.
High Noon is a film that has been a favorite of a number of American presidents.
You can look at it as, Kane simply being United States, or more specifically Bush, who goes and fights the enemy, even though there is no popular support for that. Kane tries to convince his people, doesn't work, and he goes with it anyway. He goes fights by himself.
Would you say that there are attitudes about the use of violence in High Noon that are typically American? What do we know about the Miller Gang?
Well, I think that you know that they're coming in to be violent. I think that's what America tries to say, is that we're doing preemptive stuff, and whether they really believe that or not, that's up to your own interpretation, but I think that's how we justify things, and how just about everybody does is, okay, it's self-defense. It's definitely self-defense for Gary Cooper's character.
Right, I felt that High Noon was mostly an exploration of different sort of methods of avoiding violence, whereas in A Man in Our House, Ibrahim sort of is the threat. He is the violence. I kept waiting for a non-violent moment to evolve, especially after the line, guns won't solve things when they're in the barracks. And then he ends up becoming basically a suicide bomber.
It wasn't a suicide bombing because his intent wasn't to kill himself in the process. It just happened that way because he was already dying, and so couldn't find a better reason to die than to die for the freedom of his country.
People saying it condoned violence, I personally did not agree with that at all. I didn't think it condoned violence whatsoever, especially in comparison to High Noon, where everyone seemed to defend it a little bit more.
I think it's really important to keep in mind the political and cultural context each movie was made in. You had the British colonizers who were controlling the government at the time, a puppet government rather, and the government was oppressing the people.
Some people were turned off by the film. They thought it was aggrandizing the hero, who was in their eyes maybe a terrorist, but in Egyptian eyes a freedom fighter who was fighting for Egypt's independence from colonialism.
We forgot the first scene of the movie A Man in Our House. They were actually demonstrating. And when that didn't work, because the retaliation was one of violence, you use violence. It wasn't violence against cafes or hotels or children and women. It was violence against a military barracks.
I totally disagree. When you say that we were forgetting the first scene, that's the scene I remembered. What really threw me off in that first scene was when they started screaming, death to our enemies, death to our enemies, death to... I just see a lot of anger and revenge.
I saw yesterday how many people's opinions or what they've seen from news media, how much that informed them of what they were seeing on screen. The protest in A Man in Our House is a really good example of how they were yelling death to our enemies, and everybody kind of identified that with media coverage of Islamic protests and judged the film based on that.
I would have liked to have seen the statement, death to so-and-so be omitted in the first scene, because then I feel like that would have made the opening of fire on the protesters just completely unfair, and that would have really shown that they did make a complete effort.
Like, I just don't want us to forget that they were an occupied country, and we have no idea how that feels, because we're very lucky that we live in the United States of America. But I'm just saying, for 1 second, let's just try to be in their shoes. They had a peaceful demonstration. Okay, so they said death to our enemies, which is the British. Those are words. It was still a peaceful demonstration, and those words do not justify them being shot and killed. When a peaceful demonstration doesn't work, the only alternative is violence. It's a logical continuation. That's going to happen. Peaceful demonstration, we get killed. Okay, let's step it up.
Kevin, did you want to?
Yeah, I think we're totally forgetting what happened at the exact same time period, a couple thousand miles away in India. Gandhi, the Brits were there for over 100 years. I just think that there isn't a logical progression to go directly from a protest not working and then having to immediately resort to using force.
There was kind of two groups forming, one who believes that anything can achieve without violence, and one who believes that violence sometimes is necessary. If the country who's occupying you is already there, then they've come and imposed themselves on you.
I think the liberties that we're afforded here prevent us from being able to understand what's going on over there.
Regardless of the kinds of civil liberties I've grown up with, violence is still violence, and human beings are still human beings. And when I say that I don't condone something in the Middle East, I also don't condone it in Ireland. I don't condone it in Oklahoma City. I don't condone it anywhere. If you cause pain to somebody else, you're going to cause resentment.
I think it's obviously always praiseworthy to be pursuing nonviolent means, but at the same time, I wouldn't expect them to be judgmental about it and be critical of the character for doing what he did, and to be here and kind of criticize them, tell them, you guys are immoral people trying to use violence for freeing yourself. It's like, wait a minute, what did America do 200 years ago?
And I actually see a lot of parallels to how America dealt with British occupation the same way that Egypt did. It just happened to be so much later. Before the outbreak of the war, there were militiamen who attacked British soldiers. They camouflaged and hid behind trees. It wasn't confined within the rules of war as they were then or as they are now.
I'm learning the huge differences between people in how they react to things. All of us sitting there, if each one of those people's opinions had to be translated into action, there would be wars going on.
Seeing these films, they didn't say to me that this is not what the Middle East is like. It's just what the media is saying. It kind of said even more that there is an ideology here that I don't agree with.
The way we're going right now, I just see clash of civilizations. I don't know. I don't see any peace anytime soon. I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, the thing about watching movies is there's a lot more to a culture than that can be told in 2 hours.
If you're just going to watch the films from the other cultures and just form your opinion on that, you shouldn't do that, because if you did that on American movies, everybody would think that we were blowing up stuff all the time. You want to talk to the people who made this, who it's made for and who made it, so that you can really understand what's going on.
I think films do an uncanny job of portraying the human feelings and emotions of people. You really begin to sympathize with the characters and understand the feelings that they have, and ultimately kind of really humanizes them.
Probably the most important thing I've been thinking about and feeling throughout this project is I've been noticing the ways in which differences in culture, which might be pretty minute from one culture to the next, can have such huge consequences for the world.
For better or for worse, Hollywood films have made American culture known to Arab audiences for decades. Watching Arab films may help Americans see how little we know about the Middle East. Can something as simple as watching and talking about movies temper the clash between American and Arab cultures? Can we afford not to try?